I'll just like to welcome back Dennison Ramalho.
Are you all right?
Maybe where you kind of first got your inspiration to become a filmmaker, and maybe where does all this come from?
Terence Fisher, The Devil Rides Out, and Coffin Joe. Coffin Joe is this evil undertaker created by José Mojica Marins, the filmmaker, who interprets him on the screen as well. He is the epitome of Brazilian horror, because there's not much horror made in Brazil. And he was the only filmmaker who, during the 60s and the 70s, made a very, very interesting body of work. This filmmaker, he was pretty much persecuted by the Brazilian military government by then. So his films were kind of laid off for a while and then rediscovered in the 90s. Curiously enough, they were rediscovered by the Americans, and they were released as like exotic cult horror pieces in VHS and DVD, and that's when most of us in Brazil too got the chance to know his work.
I think for anyone who isn't familiar with the Coffin Joe phenomenon, what can you? It's very cultural and very Brazilian phenomenon in terms of the way that people respond to it. Can you explain a little bit about how that might be to someone who hasn't seen his films?
I think the only thing I can say about it, in the way different audiences respond to his films differently. Well, first of all, there are the cultural and religious aspects of his films, and Brazilian sensibility is very attentive to and responsive to that. In Brazil, Catholic Brazilians are not supposed to eat meat during the week of Easter, and it's a sacrilege. And Coffin Joe does it in his films. His films, he eats, Good Friday, he eats meat in front of the priest, and the priest is terrified. And so are some members of the audience as well. They think, wow, this character is really sacrilegious.
Either financiers or the government, and you say it's another film about Satan. How do you approach that? And are they always just like, yeah, sure, here's the money, or are you like, no more Satan stuff, I'm out?
Well, in Brazil, all films are made with 90% of Brazilian production that ends up in a film support, and goes to festivals. It's government financed. About 40 to 50 Brazilian very well polished, well finished short films are financed by the government every year. And Ninjas in Love for Mother Only into 2002 and 2010 were examples of these. When you apply your project, submit your project to these screenplay contests. Of course, there is government people involved, the jury who selects the projects which are going to be financed. You don't talk exactly about the Satan part of the project, So, for example, the argument that I had in the favor of Love for Mother Only is that I was reviving, this very celebrated classical Brazilian song in film format, and that I was going to add some horror film elements, like ghost story film elements to it. The Satan part, was planned from the get-go, but only really came through, after we got the financing. When I submitted the project, it wasn't that explicit.
We'll have one final note, if you want to maybe say something about the feature projects that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, no. Right now we have a feature film called The Hell Within. This project has been in development for a while, and I have another project called Father Unknown, which is a possession film. It's a story of a son who's possessed by the dead spirit of his father, who was a cannibal killer, and that is also in development by the same with the same company that produced Ninjas.
Nothing more to add really, other than if you just put your hands together once more for Dennison.